Hi everyone, I'm Adam.
And I'm Zane, and this is A to Z, where we cover any topic from A to Z.
Last week we had a great guest, Boot to the Head from the Rogues Gallery, and today we have another member of the Rogues Gallery, and many of you may know him from the SCG Tour, his decks, or his amazing stream. Welcome, Todd Stevens.
Hello.
Hello, Todd. Welcome to the A to Z podcast. Glad to have you on today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Just, it's awesome to have other people on, and we wanted to have you on because, you're part of the Rogues Gallery. You collaborate with us, and it's really cool. So just starting with the first question, when did you first start playing Magic? Because I know you play a lot of Magic right now. When did you first start playing Magic?
Well, the first time I ever played Magic, I was in seventh grade, probably, and went to just a few F&Ms, maybe a month or two worth of F&Ms with some friends, and that was probably around like Apocalypse. I think I remember having a deck with like 4 absorbs and 4 undermines and some like recoils or something. I don't really, it was a long time ago.
Okay.
So I played for just not too long. All my cards got lost. I think somebody took them or something. So I was just off the game for a long time. And then after college, I was just hanging out with some other friends that they're like, "Hey, we're gonna play some Magic the Gathering." And I was like, "Hey, I remember that game," and played a couple just some fun nights, like casual nights at the kitchen table with them. And then I bought into Magic Online and started to play it there because I liked the game and kind of took off from there. And that was about like Zendikar Worldwake. I think Worldwake was out, so I think it was like Zen Worldwake was like the current.
Also,
one.
like exactly when you want to keep all those cards from when you started.
Yeah, right.
When did you actually start traveling for the SCG Tour?
Started that last summer, so summer of 2015. Went out. I had just like some credit card rewards where I had like some travel miles and stuff, and I'm a teacher, so summertime, and so went out to an open and had a lot of fun. I got like top 64, like the first one that I went to, and I thought my deck, I didn't really prepare for it. I thought my deck was terrible, and I didn't play very good, and still got top 64. And I was like, wow, I think I can do pretty good if I devote a little more time to it.
Oh, cool. Now, did you ever think about doing it before then, or was it just like, I have this cool trip, let me just take this cool trip, and then it just expanded from there?
Yeah, it kind of just expanded from there. I didn't really think of it beforehand because I was actually a tennis coach. So I was a high school tennis coach for 6 years, and so my weekends were always taken up because I was always traveling for tournaments or stuff like that. We played year round, and so I never had weekends free really, and I stopped coaching that end of 2015. And I was still going to be teaching, but I was going to have weekends free. And so that summer, I was like, hey, well, let's maybe play some Magic or something now.
Okay.
So I've played online basically since then, World Wake a bunch, but I never really played paper tournaments ever until then.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So
when did you decide to start streaming?
Decided to start streaming, I guess, early 2016 is whenever I kind of thought that maybe I could do that. And my first time I streamed was in May or June or so, 2016. And basically it was just I was playing a lot of Magic Online anyway, and I thought I could probably entertain people while I did it.
Now, was that in part because you were prepping so much for the SCG tour that you wanted to at least do something else with the time? Like, it was like you were sitting there, you're testing all the time, playing so much Magic Online, you're kind of like, I want to interact with people. I mean, I know it seems like you're a very people person, so it seems like it's just a natural thing to do. Was that the inclination? Like, let me try to interact with people while I'm still testing?
Yeah, basically, yeah, interacting with people is good. And yeah, just it's more fun for me to be streaming and doing that and interacting and all that than just playing Magic Online at home alone. It's more fun. So just turn on the camera and have a good time.
Do you ever find that chat in general, or just being able to stream, do you find that there are times when they're helpful, where they'll give you a line that you didn't see that you're like, oh well, that makes sense to me, or that is a more appropriate line to take?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that definitely happens. I'm not the best player or anything, especially I haven't played as long as a lot of other people. And one thing that really helps is there is just, especially now that I play Modern more. I never played Modern ever until like the end of last year. So like right
Okay.
about a year ago from now. Like I guess like last Halloween was like my first Modern tournament, and so there's just a lot of cards in Modern that were from before whenever I started playing that I don't know the exact interactions that they have, and so be able to ask chat, if I have like questions on how some cards interact or anything, it's helpful.
Okay. Now, your stream has grown a lot since you started. Did you anticipate this? Like, did you think this could happen, or were you just very surprised and pleased with, or grateful is what I like to say?
Yeah, yeah, I would say definitely very pleased, definitely very grateful. I not so sure about surprised because I didn't really have any expectations. I didn't really
Okay.
expect it to not grow. I didn't really expect it to grow a ton. I just kind of went in with open arms and just, see what happens. And it has grown a ton since I started. It's been just a great ride so far.
I mean, with that growth, I know that you said that you were a teacher by trade. Have you ever considered giving that up to be a full-time streamer and to go into Magic as a career?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I definitely have. I am a teacher, but teaching's never been like a huge passion of mine. I went to college. I got a business degree from college and under sports management and legal studies minor actually. So I didn't really go to college for teaching even.
Okay.
But I just had like some bad sales jobs, like with like ticket sales and stuff that I just didn't like, and so I definitely like teaching a lot more than that. That being said, I have really liked being a teacher. It's especially where I work at a small school. It's just a really good community. It's a really good environment. All my other coworkers are really nice and everything, and so it's real laid back and no stress ever. And the kids are real nice, and it's a really good area where I work for sure. But then again, for a lot of people on the competitive part of Magic, like I am, being able to play Magic full time would be a dream. And so, if the stream continues to grow, maybe I'll be able to get there.
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, you're already streaming a lot. You already have a lot of support there. You're writing articles already, I know. You travel for the tournaments. I mean, you have a big exposure and so much support behind you. It seems like I would say you're a well-known name, and that's something that's definitely really cool and very.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I know that I think I was watching the Players Championship at one point in time when it was live on SCG, and one of the commentators said, Todd Stevens, once they came up and said, "Hi, my name is Todd Stevens. My plan is to make the Players Championship next year." So I think that is goal achieved overall.
Yep, that was me in Indianapolis last year. It was the first tournament with Battle for Zendikar, so it was like Battle for Zendikar standard there.
Okay.
And I started. That was like maybe the second or third one that I traveled to. No, it was probably like actually, it was probably about the third or fourth one that I traveled to. And I was playing Green White Megamorph, if you remember that deck.
Yeah.
Michael Majors got second in that tournament with Green White Megamorph. He lost to Atarka Red in the finals. And Green White Megamorph was kind of like the deck to play that weekend. It was a really solid deck, and but it was the first week. Like nobody really knew that. Like these were like it was brand new format and everything. Especially when Battle came out, it was right at rotation and everything. And it just kind of turned out to be like a really good deck. I started 10-1 in that tournament and was paired against Jerry Thompson, and we had a fun match, but game 3 he destroyed me pretty good because I had to mold a 3, so that
Yeah.
worked too well. And afterwards, yes, he went up to Cedric and and Patrick Sullivan just on his own, and just told them that they thought that I was a good player and everything, and that was just really nice. And so I went up to them a little bit afterwards and just introduced myself and said, hey, it was the end of last year, but I'm going to try to make the Players Championship in 2016. That was a goal of mine, and I ended up getting there. And so
yeah, you did it. A lot of hard work, a lot of weekends, but
yep.
A lot of frustration, as always. It is magic after all.
You had some success along the way. You won a classic, which was awesome, right? You had some good top. I don't remember how high top finishes, but consistent
4
results.
top 8s throughout the year. I had a top 8 in standard, modern, and legacy. Ended up with 2 with modern.
Okay.
And
so, made a couple decks so far.
Yeah, he made his own deck so far. He doesn't just come to the table with anything.
It's like I make my own decks. I top 8 a bunch of things. No big deal. just another year, right?
Yeah.
It was interesting that you bring up formats being new. At least for the Battle for Zendikar one, where new decks would come out, and I know that you have been interested in Frontier, and you've been trying to learn the ins and outs of the format. Do you see it as a viable format going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. It may run into the quote same problems that Modern has later on, but I don't really see Modern having that many problems. Modern's the most popular format in Magic right now, and I think Frontier can be just the same kind of thing. It can just be another Modern-like format that is extremely popular.
I mean, of all the decks that you wrote about in your article, because you did just have a successful article come out on SCG, which of them are your favorite, or are you looking to angle into building your own?
Definitely looking to angle into building my own. I mean, the Frontier format is as brand new as a format can possibly get, and so decks are nowhere near tuned or anything right now. The deck that I thought looked the best to me, like if I was, for some reason, it had like a Frontier tournament tomorrow or like a challenge or something, and someone's like, pick one of these decks to play, I would play the Abzan aggro deck that was at the bottom of the article. I thought the mana base looked pretty smooth. I really liked the curve. I like how I played the green-white Megamorph. At the beginning of that format, I played green-black Delirium aggro, like whenever Eldritch Moon was released. I like whenever formats are kind of new to play aggressive decks, but I don't really like the all-in aggressive, like a Tarka Red type deck. Like, that's not really my style. I still like my aggressive decks to be able to have a grindy element, to be able to win late games as well. That Abzan aggro deck had Smuggler's Copter and Scrap Heap Scrounger, which were both pretty good cards to grind out opponents with.
I mean, it's so sweet, the interaction between like Smuggler's Copter and Scrap Heap Scrounger and Grim Flare and and you just like the way it interacts. It's just like one little piece, and then Treasure Cruise when you like with the Abzan blue decks, the ones that splash for Treasure Cruise. I mean, that's a little bit different of a deck than the Abzan aggro you're talking about, but it's still just so cool, the interactions of you have all these cool cards over this time span, and it only becomes better, right? Because it's an eternal format. It's not a new extended. It's an eternal format. So like, how do you think these next few sets are going to impact? Obviously, right now, Frontier. 50% of Frontier is standard legal cards. How do you think these next few sets are going to impact the format?
Oh, well, they'll have a huge impact on Frontier, because the card pool for Frontier isn't that big yet. So every new set that you bring, like when you bring 250 new cards for a new set, it just of course have a big impact. Now, we've seen that the power level of some of these other sets are extremely high, especially Khans of Tarkir was it may have been the most powerful set ever. I mean, it's up there. Easily the most powerful set in this small lifespan of Frontier.
Right.
Even other stuff like Magic Origins and Eldritch Moon had a ton of powerful cards. Mm-hmm. So there's still some things to fight with, but every new set that you have will have a big impact on that format.
I guess the main thing too is that, as you said earlier, Frontier isn't really figured out yet. It's not solved. It's wide open, and I think the interesting thing, and modern, for one thing against modern, it is relatively solved. You have a meta that's heavy in this. You play this style of deck. You have a meta that's heavy in, let's say, oh, well, I'll play against all infect and, aggressive decks. What should I play? It's like, oh, there are answers that you can have. And with Frontier, there really aren't any specific answers to say, hey, the meta is wide open. What should I play? It's very interesting.
Yeah, the questions haven't really been there yet. There are plenty of answers in Frontier. There's plenty of hate cards for different strategies, but we don't really know what the questions are yet. We don't really know what people are like the main threats that they're bringing, because there's just such a diversity of threats right now in the format. It could be anything from Siege Rhino to Panharmonicon to Rally to Torrential Gearhulk. Those are just a few off the top of my head. That the format's just wide open right now.
Right, I think that wide openness with that small sample size is definitely something that comes into play, and over time, that small sample size is going to become larger, obviously. So, like when the sample size becomes larger and more people play the more the people that play a format, the more decks that are constantly played.
I guess the one thing I love about Frontier as well, and for me personally, I started really back into competitive Magic right around M15 and cons. So there's a little bit of nostalgia there for me. But a lot of new players that I saw coming out to, the local game stores that we have around me, and a lot of people who would go in and say, oh yeah, I want to learn how to play Magic, but I want to learn an eternal format. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to say, hey, here's, X tens of thousands of cards. Learn all of these, and then you'll kind of figure out Modern a little bit. But this is much more constrained. There aren't as many mechanics. All the mechanics are used overall. They moved into using those evergreen keywords to, keep everything more linear, which is great. Like Battalion. Does anyone know what Battalion does?
Well,
off the top of your head?
I do.
But to a new player, you have to remember Battalion. You have to remember like Persist and like 17 other things, and like their cohort, and there are just so many different words and mechanics and interactions that you have to try to remember. And I know that you said earlier, you had to go and you had to learn Modern, which is a very big time commitment overall. At least it was for me. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, and I don't know if you would agree or not, Frontier is great because for new players especially, it's very familiar and they can pick it up very easily.
Well, definitely compared to the other Eternal formats. Maybe not just overall. It's may not for a new player be familiar overall, but definitely compared to the other Eternal formats, it would be much easier to pick up. Like you said, not nearly as many cards that are to really know about. I know just in the local scene around me that there's I have friends that are just kind of tired of investing so much money in Standard all the time, and especially they have families and everything. They like the Eternal format thing, but Modern also is just so many cards as well, and they're actually just really excited about Frontier, and instead they had like weekly Standard nights that they all got together to play Standard. Now they're doing Frontier instead, and just not going on to that. So I definitely see this format picking up. There's a lot of people that still have their questions about it, but I definitely think this format's gonna pick up.
Yeah, I definitely just from streaming Frontier, I know that some of the people that came into chat, there are multiple people from different areas of the country that came into chat, and from other countries as well, that came into chat and said, hey, my store is, instead of doing FNM Standard, we're doing Frontier now. Like, that's
wow.
Like, because there was no interest in their store for Standard. It was so low. They would get like eight people max for Standard. Now for Frontier, they get like, it was like 16 plus, because it has a little bit more of a card pool, and it has the cards they enjoyed when they first got into it, or it's just better, or like, or I mean, it's different. You can't we have to be careful when we compare like that. It is just a different format than Standard. It's not that it's better or worse.
Right. Wizards has been they've been doing really well printing cards overall recently, and I think they're just doing a really good job printing cards, and so in this modern era, and so having Frontier be just all these cards from the last couple of years that have been just a lot of fun to play. I think the gameplay is just really nice.
And I remember reading an article by Mark Rosewater that said, or I think it was an article back from 2010, when he said, this was a design failure. This was a design failure. This is a design failure. I mean, R&D, they'll always, keep getting better at what they do.
Right.
And I think they have been doing great, especially since right about that M15 range. Like all the cards are very, they follow a storyline. They actually interact well. I don't think there have been any real big design mistakes overall. A delve might be a consideration, but
Treasure Cruise, take your time. Those two, but
I mean, like it is. The sets have been feeling much better overall. They're not as confusing. They're not as just disjointed. So I think it is a good spot to start it right at M15. I know I was an opponent of that, and I said that they should start at Origins, just because of the cons block being incredibly overpowered.
Yeah, and the fetch lands are not the best. The fetch lands just don't really leave for good gameplay, good watching experience, everything like that. All the shuffling. I think we can go away from that too.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is there isn't a ton of land hate in the format, so you do get these, and you have duels still. Like I know they're roughly shocks, but like you get these mana bases. I know they're not shocks. See, I see you shaking your head over there. I know they're not shocks, but I'm saying they function in the way that shocklands do in terms of mana fixing for Frontier. And you're able to have these 4-color and 5-color decks, which is very fun, but also can become overpowered by having the best cards in each color be available to you.
Yeah, we'll just see what happens with the format. We'll see if the fetch lands will be around for very long or what. We'll see.
That's all we can do. We just wait, see, and go with the flow, and all the while just keep having fun building in Frontier. Now, I know there are a lot of people who do want to build their own deck in Frontier and do want to test out decks. Do you have any tricks to creating your own deck?
Tricks to creating your own deck. I think one thing when creating your own deck is, or just the biggest mistake I see for whenever people make their own decks is they try to build too much synergy between cards. I guess what I mean by that is that people try to play generally weak cards because they maybe have some kind of good synergy with another card instead of just playing overall powerful cards. I think that relying on certain cards to make others better is nice, but it can be a crutch also. One of probably the most famous deck that I've helped put together was Bant Eldrazi in Modern, and if you look at that deck, that's just a collection of extremely powerful cards. Sure, you have Eldrazi Displacer and Drowner of Hope that work really well together. But besides that, all of those cards, Thought Not Seer, Reality Smasher, even Noble Hierarch, Ancient Stirrings, Path to Exile, all these cards are extremely powerful on their own. And I think that's a key whenever you're making your deck, is make sure that your cards, like all the cards in your deck, are still really good on their own.
I know you bring up Bant Eldrazi. I know you've built Sun and Moon. I know that myself as a Modern Inflect player, I strongly hate those decks with a passion. I always lose to them every time.
And it's okay, me too. Whenever I play against them too, I always lose to them also. So
thanks for that. I appreciate it.
I don't know. Those are very strong, and the thing about building those decks is, you're right. Synergy is important, but synergy is not everything. You have to have power level, and I've seen it so many times where people are they're stuck on a cool idea and they're like, well, what if your cool idea doesn't happen? What's your backup plan?
Yep, and you need, getting 7 random cards out of 60, like main plans just don't really work. You talk about like your best hands, like with Bant Eldrazi, you have turn 2 Thought Nazi or turn 3 Reality Smasher, turn 4 Drowner of Hope. Be like, oh man, look how great this deck is. But that only happens 5% or less than times.
Right.
So you have to have a good 95% of games also, not just a good 5% of games.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Now, what were your best times and worst times this year? I know you ground out the Players Championship. You got there, and you had a great time there. Mm-hmm. And what was the best and worst times of your year? And you started streaming this year as well. Just so there's lots of things to choose from.
Yeah, lots of things to choose from. Worst, or I guess we'll start with best. Best is pretty. It's not real easy, but I had a real fun road trip this year where I drove up to Worcester, Massachusetts, which is I don't know, like a 30-hour drive or so, and went with a friend from here. Went with me who doesn't play Magic, but still just went along for the trip, and we just got to see. And they'd never really seen the country before, and we got to drive through all the eastern cities. We got to go through Washington D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York. Cool. And got to see everything. Also, the trip just ends up going through, like, for how the interstates go. I actually drove through Roanoke first to get to go there, and so we picked up Tom Ross on the way, and so he got to go with us. And then and the open that we traveled to was Legacy, and so Tom got to kind of give me some ins and outs about playing Infect in Legacy, and I'm brand new to Legacy. It was my third Legacy tournament ever, and ended up running real hot at that tournament and making top 8, and so that was really cool.
What deck did you play for that weekend?
That was just a great trip overall.
What was your introduction to Legacy? What was your first deck?
My first deck was Colorless Eldrazi. Played it in February.
Okay.
Chris Van Meter let me borrow that deck, so that was really nice of him. And he was commentating the event. I went 5-3 I had 2 buys, so 3-3 after 2 buys. I actually dropped after round 8 because 6-3 wasn't going to be able to make it, and I was visiting, and I had a friend visiting me, and so I went and saw them. But so that was pretty good. And then my second tournament, I played just a classic where I borrowed Tom's Smallpox deck. Is it Smallpox or is it just Pox? I guess just regular Pox.
Yeah, I think
it was sweet.
Yeah, it's just Pox.
That Pox Loam deck too.
Yeah,
floats around there.
It's just mono black, like mono black Pox, and your only ways to win were like Mutavault and like Nether Spirit, and
it
was really cool. It had like Tabernacle, Pendrell Veil, and stuff. It was really cool. And I would started like 0-2 and went like 2, and then won 2 in a row, and was that like 2-2, or no, actually maybe it was 0-3 and then 3-3, or it was something like that. And then I just remember that Tom had to go, and so I gave him the deck back, and I didn't think I was going to be able to qualify for prizes anyway, but didn't finish that. Only played about 4 rounds of that tournament, 4 or 5 or so.
Okay.
And maybe I was 3-2. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway,
it's a mystery.
And then the third tournament was that one with Infect, and so that felt really good.
Now,
Infect is fun in Legacy.
Now, what was the worst part of your year then, if that was the best?
Okay, worst part of the year. Okay, so probably like towards the end of season 2 on the SCG tour. So season 2, I ended up in 4th place in the seasonal rankings, and the top 3 make the Players Championship.
Right.
Now, I was real close with both Andrew Jessup and Kevin Jones were second and third. They passed me. I was real close to them going into the last couple tournaments.
Okay.
Like the last 2 opens and invitational. Like I was right, like same amount of points or maybe a little ahead or right there with them. And I ended up like 15 or 20 points back or so. I just got basically minimum points for the last 2 opens and invitational. So that was really bad. And it wasn't just like everything went wrong or anything. I was just playing really bad.
Okay.
I was just making lots of mistakes. I was playing a bunch of just new decks that I wasn't very good with, and was just too cocky and confident, and just thought I could just show up and win and stuff. And It was pretty bad, and I had like I remember one of the opens was Syracuse where I played Infect and Modern, and like after probing my opponent, I knew they had like a Spell Pierce or something, something or they had a Curse Catcher on board. That's right, I was playing against Merfolk. They had a Curse Catcher on board. Instead of me playing my land and still killing them with Become Immense, I just cast my Become Immense, and they just countered it unless I paid one, which I couldn't, so I died. So that was really bad. And then, yeah, and then like the next tournament, I was playing Tron. You know, I'd never played Tron before, and my opponent was at 13 and all tapped out, and they did this big attack, a Naya deck, where they made this huge attack, put me at 1 life, and they were at 13, and they were all tapped out. All their creatures were tapped, and I had an Ulamog and a Beast token. And I was just over there trying to find like an Ugin, like cycling all these cards, trying to find like an Ugin decks out of their board. I couldn't find it. I was trying to find like my 3rd Tron piece to be able to cast Ugin. And I was like, well, dang, can't find it. I guess you win. And he was like, really? I was like, yep. Good game. That was game 3. And I could have just attacked. You know, he was at 13. I had a 10-10 and a 3-3. Just didn't do it. So
I don't want to win that way. Overkill.
I want to win the Ugin.
Overkill.
Right over. Never let it go, because it was at the Invitational. He picked me, like they did like the pre-show where they like picked like some player to do really well that weekend, and he picked me, and then he was sitting right behind me watching that match, and he was just like, "Are you kidding me?" And I was like, "Whoops, sorry."
Whoops.
Yeah.
Oopsie, sorry, dude. My bad.
I had a couple just real bad weekends where I like it was about a month of just real bad playing, just bad deck choices, just not really preparing too well, just all overall bad. And basically Tom, just kind of told me, "Hey man, you're playing like really bad," and I'm like, "Yeah, I am." And so kind of got me to start refocusing and everything, and realize that you have to do your best. You can't just show up and win.
Right, and you kicked it up. You got it.
Yeah, I did. And then I after that season 3 went really well for me. Every open in season 3, I started either 7-2 or 8-1 on day 1. So I played a whole lot better and was a lot just picked it up.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for stopping by today, Todd. We really appreciate having you on A to Z. Thank you for all our viewers and listeners for tuning into A to Z. We'll be back next week covering all the new year has for us in 2017 with Tucker French, another member of the Rogues Gallery. You may know him as Professor French. So you can also follow us all on Twitter and Twitch, AmerCS, ZMagic94, and is it Todd Stevens MTG on all social media for Todd. And also check out our affiliations and sponsors, TeamNFGBot.com, and the Rogues Gallery, which we are all a part of. Rogues Gallery, awesome streamers, awesome people. That's what I always like to say. And also check out newly founded Swiftspear Games, which is not on the actual the showing, the visual yet. But Swiftspear Games is a frontier-based group that is trying to provide nice virtual content to everyone, and also to pump up the Frontier format even more than it is already. So thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.